We're going to start with Gabrielle. So, brief introduction about Gabrielle: was brought up Orthodox Jewish, and in college began exploring other spiritual traditions, much as many of us probably did at that age. Eventually came to Kabbalah, which is the Jewish mystical tradition, and was so inspired that he moved to Israel and studied with some of the greatest living masters of the Kabbalistic tradition. So his talk is called Remapping Our Religious Stories Through an Integral Lens, the Jewish Perspective. So please welcome Gabrielle.
I'm going to begin tonight by sharing an experience I had when I was younger. I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, and I used to frequent a cemetery there. And I used to go there to think about life and God. And one day when I was there, I had a revelation. And that revelation was sparked by a question, which I'm going to share with you in just a moment. At the time, I was exploring my own concept and understanding of God. As Jeff said, I grew up Orthodox Jewish and was given a very rigid concept, very specific concept of what God should mean to me and how I should relate to God. And at the time, I was going through a process of figuring out what actually God meant to me. And what I came to is that God is one. Something the Jewish tradition definitely teaches us. And that what that actually means is that everything and everyone is God. And that an experience of this oneness of all of existence is the greatest joy and gift a human being can have. And that actually God, this being called God, wants all of us to wake up and realize this oneness and live together in peace and harmony. So the question that came to me that day was, if this is what God is, and there are all these religions that are seemingly devoted to God and to serving God, why is it that we're not working together? And the revelation that followed was this: if all these religions were actually to work together, then we might actually be able to create heaven on earth. Now I'm going to share some assumptions and I'm going to share some questions, so just bear with me. Assumption number one: all religions at their core want to help people wake up to the realization of God's oneness, to the oneness of all of existence. And all religions at their core want us to live in peace and harmony together on the planet Earth. Assumption number two: all religions actually face similar barriers to waking up. And these barriers are what's called societal conditioning, or sleep. And regardless of what religion you are, we all face the same barriers. These are human barriers. And the societal conditioning, what it looks like is society telling us that there's something else going on here besides waking up to God's oneness, besides waking up to this reality and living together in peace and harmony. And it also specifically comes out, if you can see in Western culture, as telling us that there's something else more important than your soul's journey, or that your value is determined by not your soul's journey towards realization, but your value is determined by things like your body, how much money you make, your occupation or social status, or how much stuff you have. Now, a question that follows is, if we have the same goals and we have the same barriers, what is it that keeps us from working together? And the answer I came up with is it's our ethnocentric identities that keep us from working together. Because I'm a Jew and you're a Christian, or I'm a Muslim and you're a Hindu. And it's these age-old stories and conflicts and the pain that comes from them and identifying with that pain, as well as the beliefs in rigid dogma that keep me from sitting down with you and sharing a meal and discussing how we're going to wake up and how we're going to wake the world up and live in peace and harmony together. So another question that comes out is, so how are we going to overcome these ethnocentric barriers that keep us from working together? And as you might guess, the answer is by remapping our religious stories through an integral lens. I see three parts in this. First, we have to help refocus each religion on its own cosmocentric teachings. Second, we need to revisit our understanding of what God is and what serving God is. Third, we need to reinterpret our religious stories in terms of global evolution. So what does that actually look like? It means we need to teach the real story. How do we teach our religious stories through a cosmocentric perspective? The way that I see it, there's three main questions that religion answers. Where are we? What are we? And what are we doing? Or what are we supposed to be doing here? Now, the ethnocentric answer to these questions versus the cosmocentric answer to these questions is the difference between night and day. And I want to give you an example of the ethnocentric version of Judaism. It goes a little bit something like this. If your mother is or was Jewish, so are you. God gave the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and it's your eternal duty as a Jew to follow these commandments. Now the cosmocentric version is a little bit different. It goes something like this. You are a cosmic vessel built to receive God's cosmic light. So I want to go a little bit further into the exploration of cosmocentric Judaism. And in Judaism, as Jeff also mentioned, we have what's called the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah is the mystical Jewish tradition, and it gives us more of core, deep answers to the questions of life and existence. So one of the main things that Kabbalah describes is this process of involution and evolution. And involution is the process of movement from infinite nothingness and everythingness down the spirated tree, down the 4 worlds, into our universe of finite existence. And it describes that process of how that came into existence. And then evolution continues to describe the process in the movement from matter to life to mind to consciousness. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. One of the other main things that Kabbalah describes is it tells us what we actually are. And like I said, it says that we are vessels. We are vessels to receive light. And in fact, all of creation are vessels to receive light. And this process of what we call evolution is really the process of unfolding of vessels. So that this movement of matter to life to mind to consciousness is really the movement of creating larger and larger vessels to get to the point where we have a vessel that has a capacity, has an infinite capacity. And the human being, Kabbalah says, is that vessel. The vessel that has the capacity to receive infinite amount of light. And that, as Kabbalah says, is the purpose of creation. So I want to take a moment to look at how to cosmocentrically interpret the Bible. The way that I see it, the Bible is a partial history of involution and evolution, with a focus on the specific development of a group of human beings called the Jewish people, called the sons of Jacob, the sons of Israel. And I want to focus on one specific story in this Jewish tradition, and that is the story of the receiving of the Torah. And that story is celebrated on the holiday of Shavuot. Shavuot is 7 weeks after Passover, after the Exodus from Egypt. 7 weeks after being liberated from the constriction of Egypt, we find ourselves at the base of a mountain, and we receive mass revelation together of the 10 Commandments, basically of God's will. So the ethnocentric version of the story is, it's the day we received the Torah and we became a nation. The cosmocentric version is it's the day we received the Torah and became a nation, and more importantly, it's the day that the shift from involution to evolution occurred. So how is that? So involution is this movement from infinite to finite, but it's also the continuation of the movement of creating a vessel. So in evolution, you might think that evolution started with the creation of the universe or the creation of planet Earth. But actually, the way that I see it, evolution only began with this moment that the Jews received the Torah. And the reason for that is, it says in the Bible that when the Jews received the Torah, they were like Ki'ish echad kelev echad. They were like one person, like one heart. What that means is basically they were able in that moment to transcend their personal egos and unite with a collective consciousness, consciously devoted and committed to bringing about evolution on the planet Earth. And that is that pinnacle moment in the process of evolution. So here's my proposal. In the future, religions will help us align with our destinies of becoming conscious evolutionary change agents. What do these future humans look like? And how will they be manifested? To answer these questions, let's look at the current situation and get a feel for what might need to shift. So I'm going to share two stories with you. About a week ago, I was in the desert in California. And I was sitting on the ground, and I was surrounded by this deep, powerful silence. And what became incredibly apparent to me was that my mind was so loud that there was just this constant noise in my head. And that actually, my mind was dictating every action and movement I made. Whether it was trying to fulfill the needs of my body, fulfill the needs of my emotions, fulfill the needs of the mind itself, it was dictating every single movement I made. And the thought that came to me in that moment was, what if my mind was silent? What if something else was directing my movements and actions? So about 2 or 3 months ago, I was on the BART, and I was just observing what was going on, and I was observing all these conversations, and I was like, seeing that people were just talking about everyday reality, you know, what's the latest news on Whitney Houston's death, and, you know, what am I going to eat for dinner, and how was my day, and just like they knew where they were, and they knew what was going on, and like all of this was real to them. And I find myself having similar conversations, saying, thinking, acting in similar ways. But at times I stop and I have this realization, it just boggles my mind that here I am speaking about these trivial matters while sitting amongst the most awesome mystery fathomable to humankind, existence itself. Now, I'm not saying that actually things need to be different than they are, because actually at this point we're still being the unconscious servants of evolution. But what would it look like if we were being dictated by something other than our egos, by something other than our societally conditioned minds? What would those conversations on BART sound like? So right now, conscious evolution is being brought into our personal lives in more overt ways. You sitting here right now are the proof and the products of that set evolution. And the integral movement as well. But that's just it. There is no integral movement independent of evolution. Just as there's no religious movements independent of evolution. They're all steps along the path, along this unfolding process. So in conclusion, what are the roles and contributions of the integral movement and of religions in general in this unfolding process? And where do these two roads meet? There's some approximate statistics about the major religions. There's 25 major religions in the world. 88% of the people on the planet believe in God. And more than half the world's population belong to either Christian, Muslim, or Hindu religions. So if you look at the integral movement in comparison to these religions and to the state of the world of religions right now, it doesn't even exist. And at the same time, it holds some of the biggest keys to the transformation of our current paradigm. So what does religion have to offer? Well, first of all, it's got the numbers. And there's already a framework in place for the service to God. There's a ceaseless focus, devotion, and commitment to the service of God, even to the point of sacrificing one's own life. Now imagine all of these humans in religions. Imagine if they were so focused and committed to waking up, to bringing about conscious evolution. That would be pretty powerful. So, I want to leave you with a question tonight. Potentially, it's our role as integralists, besides working on our own waking up process, to help other religions remap their stories and get back on track to their original core goals and aims. And start working together instead of working against each other, instead of fighting each other. And sometimes going back to our families, to the places we came from, to help them take the next steps in their lives can be the most difficult challenge. And perhaps that is the challenge that we actually need to face, that we're here to face. Because it doesn't seem like religions are going anywhere anytime soon. And if we want to help the world evolve, we have to help religions evolve as well.